My name is Olivia. I'm 45 years old. I married Matthew, who's 2 years younger than me, 15 years ago. We met at a social gathering. A friend mentioned that I had recently bought a house. It must have caught Matthew's attention because he pursued me ardently despite me being older. Initially, I was skeptical, but his warm smile and kind, intelligent demeanor won me over during our one-on-one date. I had never had a serious relationship before, and I quickly fell for him. To keep him interested, I tried my best to embody the ideal woman he was looking for. Fortunately, I never disliked housework. I was used to living alone, so playing the role of a homemaker wasn't too hard. A year into our relationship, he proposed and we got married. Upon his request, I switched from a full-time job to part-time. Little did I know that my efforts to captivate him would backfire in such a way. It all started one evening when I was late coming home from work. The weather turned bad suddenly, and I rushed home, regretting that I had left laundry out to dry. If this was the case, I shouldn't have hung the laundry outside to dry. I was relieved to find Matthew was already home, seemingly having gotten off work early. Apparently, it was unusually early today. It was good. Great. The rain just started. The laundry should be fine, I thought as I entered the house. I'm home. Welcome back. Wait, why does he sound so grumpy? I saw Matthew sitting on the sofa watching TV with a pile of crumpled laundry beside him. What's the deal with the laundry? Thanks for bringing it in. Don't hang laundry outside when the weather's like this. Aren't you ashamed to make your husband do chores? What? My gratitude vanished. My husband sighed loudly. Why do you think I wanted you to switch to part-time? So you can take care of the house. You're my wife. You should be doing that. What an outdated way of thinking. And it's pouring rain outside. But back then, I was head over heels for Matthew. Plus, I was the one who tried to play the role of the perfect homemaker. I swallowed my complaints and agreed. Confused, I looked at the lucky charm my friend gave me for moments like this. Slowly, my heart calmed down. Back then, that was enough for me not to resent Matthew. A year later, our adorable daughter Ava was born. Being close to my family was a godsend for support. Matthew adored Ava. But that was it. He never really helped much with housework or childcare. Yet, Ava was very attached to him because he spoiled her. Maybe being playful is enough? Fortunately, we could live off Matthew's salary. When Ava turned 3, I put her in daycare and started a part-time job. Then, I started using my own earnings to make my life a bit easier. Matthew never interfered with how I managed the house or raised our child. Whenever he complained about the house being messy or dinner being late, I reminded myself that he was just a big kid who happened to earn money to keep my sanity. Like that, we lived as a typical family of 3, more or less happily. Then, one Saturday, after Ava had gone to her extracurricular activities, Matthew's phone rang. From what I could hear, it seemed like it was his mother. He was scratching his head while listening intently. Once he hung up, I asked, "What happened?" "Well, can my mom and dad stay with us for a while?" "Sure." Matthew explained that his parents, Chloe and Brian, needed to move in temporarily because their apartment was being demolished.
They're getting old, and it's hard for them to find another place they feel safe in. Is that okay?
I get it. I really do. But having his parents live with us, although I felt uneasy, I agreed. What can you do? I could never say no in front of Matthew. A month later, Chloe and Brian arrived with a moving truck. They hauled in a ton of stuff and started exploring our house. Eventually, commenting, "It's a bit cramped." "That's because of all your stuff." I held back my thoughts and offered a polite smile. I opened the door that connects to the living room. "This room, on the first floor is for you, Chloe and Brian. Please make yourself at home until you find a new place."
"It looks like it gets chilly in here."
"We have a heater, so feel free to use it." Chloe started unpacking her things, obviously dissatisfied. Meanwhile, Brian opened the fridge without asking. "Hey, Brian!"
"What? We're gonna be living here, right? What's wrong with opening my own fridge?"
"Well, you're right, but you've barely been here before. A heads up would be nice."
"I drink 3 beers a day. I'll let it slide this time, but keep it stocked from now on."
"All right." I knew this would happen. In more polite terms, my in-laws have an old-fashioned way of thinking. The elderly deserve respect, and men are naturally more important than women. When Ava was born, their first words were,
"The next one should be a boy."
The tricky part is that they absolutely dote on their son Matthew, and Matthew, in turn, acts like a child around them. Fortunately, we live far from my in-laws, so until now, we've only had to endure them during summer vacations and Christmas. But it's getting harder to imagine this lasting much longer. I've tried to be optimistic, thinking it would only be a few months of hardship as we transition into a new living situation. However, that optimism was about to be shattered.
"Olivia, I've been meaning to ask, is this all we're having for dinner?"
Chloe said, wearing a displeased look on her face. "Is there a problem with that?"
"Are you sure we're getting enough nutrients with so few dishes?"
"We might not have a very large variety, but I've loaded the soup with vegetable and there's also salad. It should be nutritionally balanced." "Grandma, Mom cooks dinner after coming home from work. I think this is enough." To Ava's gentle interjection, Chloe responded curtly,
"Children who know nothing shouldn't interrupt adult conversations. I'm saying this for your benefit and Matthew's, okay?" "Fair point. You do have weekends off, so you could at least prepare something in advance."
Matthew answered, and Chloe nodded in satisfaction. "I'm so tired of running errands, like buying beer and adding more blankets because the room's cold. All because I have to cater to my in-laws' whims."
"If you get it, then focus on your studies. Don't act all high and mighty until you get into college worth boasting about."
At Chloe's icy words, Ava hurriedly finishes her meal and quickly heads upstairs to her room. Seeing Ava's reaction, I can't help but sigh at Chloe, who's always complaining about bad manners. Does she really think someone can stay calm after being spoken to like that? Besides, there are people far worse than that.
"Yeah, right there! Hit it! Hit it! Run!"
Brian is munching on chicken and cheese, drinking beer, and loudly enjoying a baseball game in front of the TV. It's irritating to see Brian so excited, spitting while talking with one knee up on the couch. Ever since the in-laws came, Brian, being the eldest male, gets the most special treatment, followed by Matthew, Chloe, and then me, Ava. Sure,
There's a time and place to respect the pecking order within a family.
But what about Ava's feelings when her whole life gets upended because of the whims of live-in in-laws? These in-laws don't work, don't contribute to household expenses, and don't even look for a new place. When I asked them to contribute financially, they screamed at me hysterically.
"We never asked our son for money. How dare you ask us for money?"
It doesn't make any sense. They're still spending money at the spa and shopping without a second thought. Both Ava and I are nearing our limit. Over the weekend, I waited until the in-laws were asleep and snuck in a conversation with Matthew. Listen, ever since Brian and Chloe arrived, Ava's been locking herself in her room. Plus, we're spending more on groceries and utilities. This is our home. You should talk to Chloe and Brian about being more considerate.
Huh? Oh, they said they'll move out soon. Just bear with it for a little while.
Matthew responds absent-mindedly, eyes glued to his mobile phone. Lately, he's been addicted to mobile games. Whenever he's free, he's on his phone. He's been working late and even going to work on weekends. The other weekend, he suddenly had to go on a business trip and left in a hurry. Are you even listening?
I'm listening, I'm listening.
What could be so interesting? As I lean over to take a look, Matthew abruptly stands up, hiding the screen.
What are you doing? That's private.
Sure, mobile phones are private. But should he be so startled just because I might see his game? What are you hiding?
Nothing.
If it's nothing, then show me. I'm curious about what mobile game has you so hooked.
Well, it's just that,
Matthew fumbles with his phone behind his back. And just then, a message alert rings out from his usually quiet phone. It seems he had taken it off silent mode without realizing. It's Friday night, 11 p.m. Who messages someone at this hour? It's not like we're teenagers anymore. Something seemed off. You got a message. Want to check it? I smiled calmly. Matthew glanced at his phone screen and gave a fake smile.
It's a work thing. We should head to bed. I have to work tomorrow.
On his way to the bedroom, Matthew's phone slipped out of his hand. As he quickly picked it up and skimmed the screen, the message read, Megan, looking forward to tomorrow. Love you. Panicked, I snatched his phone and confronted him. What's this about having fun at work with another woman? Who's Megan? Love you? Have you been sending her the same thing? My gut feeling was right. Matthew looked around nervously before sitting down.
I'm sorry. It was just a harmless game.
To put it bluntly, Matthew was cheating. His excuse about being addicted to mobile games was a total lie. Turns out, the other woman was a junior colleague, and his excuses about weekend shifts and business trips were all lies too. The unexpected betrayal left me dizzy. Here I was, balancing work, house chores, and childcare, doing my best to support Matthew. Fed up with his dismissive attitude, something in me snapped. You think it's okay because you're not serious.
You're so annoying.
Just then, my in-laws woke up, rubbing their sleepy eyes.
What's going on?
Perfect timing. Let's share what their darling son has done. Brian, Chloe, you need to hear this. I explained everything I just found out to my in-laws. Matthew sat there, shrinking like a child who just got scolded. I didn't care if they thought it was childish to tattle to my in-laws. They all should feel a bit of shame. Matthew and his parents. I finished my rant and took a deep breath. That's when Brian mumbled, seemingly uninterested.
Is that all?
What?
He said it was a game, right? A fling or two is just men being men. If you're gonna be angry over that, you're going to have a hard time.
I can't take this anymore. That's right. Chloe would understand me, I thought. I looked away from ear-picking Brian to Chloe and was flabbergasted. Unbelievably, Chloe was rubbing Matthew's back and consoling him.
It's terrible that she snooped through your phone and yelled at you. She used to be such a domestic and adorable woman when she first came to greet us. Now look at her. Just an irritating wife. I'd understand if you wanted to have some fun. Mom, you get me? All I wanted was a little excitement.
Matthew lifts his face, nodding in agreement. Chloe, seemingly astounded, lets out a sigh.
Please don't throw a tantrum over this. If she's getting cheated on, it's because she lacks charm, you know.
I'm at a loss for words. I can't keep up with these people who, as if nothing happened, not only go on with life, but also defend their cheating son. I thought I could hold on at least until Ava becomes an adult, but I've reached my limit. Let's get a divorce. I pulled out the pre-filled divorce application that I got when I was younger. Matthew looked at his parents as if he were a helpless puppy. His parents snorted.
Matthew, we think it's fine to break up. You're talented and handsome. You'll have plenty of chances. Besides, the girl you're dating now is young, right? Expecting a son, perhaps? Women are just too chatty anyway.
Matthew, seeing how the situation unfolds, laughs as if he just realized something.
Exactly. She used to be so adorable, but now she treats me like I'm invisible. Starting a new family could be a way to reset things.
You've got to be kidding me. It was Matthew who first started neglecting Ava. Matthew started finding it tedious to engage with Ava as she matured and lost some of her cuteness. It's absurd to think a father who only engages whimsically would be liked. Whatever affection I had left for Matthew dissipates rapidly. So you admitted to cheating. For the divorce, expect not just property division, but also a minimum of a few $1,000s in compensation. The moment I say this, Matthew's hand stops writing. Chloe grabs his hand.
Why should our son pay that much when you're the cause of the affair? In our time, that wasn't a thing. If you have to pay that, don't agree to the divorce.
Even if it's a messed up logic, it's 3 against 1 from an outsider's perspective. Matthew snickers at his own situation.
That's right. If I don't sign here, we can't get divorced. If you want a divorce, you have to respect our opinions as well.
What is he saying? Is this some kind of threat? I can't do this anymore. Everything about these people is just too much. My anger is about to explode. Fine. Instead of property and compensation, I'll just take what I bought. You can record this as a promise. Matthew and his parents visibly relax. Before I change my mind, Chloe prompts us to open the voice memo apps on our phones. I record exactly what I just said, and Matthew quickly agrees.
Here's to new beginning.
Matthew eagerly starts filling out the divorce application. Late that night, after the 3 of them went to bed, I sent Ava a message about our future plans. I sighed with relief when Ava's okay came back. Don't have any regrets now. Be prepared. Then, I hurriedly looked for a new place to live. The divorce papers are already filed. Of course, I won full custody of Ava. Today's the day Ava and I leave this house for good. I was busy making preparations for the move. My in-laws and Matthew have become more arrogant than ever. Day drinking, as usual. We need to get out of here ASAP. Ava has long lost patience with my in-laws and has already packed her stuff. I didn't have much to pack either. It figures. I'd hardly done any shopping for myself since getting married. It was almost time for the movers to arrive.
It's good we don't have much stuff. Makes the move cheaper,
Chloe said, poking at our packed boxes. Ava and I exchanged glances and couldn't help but laugh.
What are you talking about? We ordered the largest truck available. Huh?
Ignoring the stunned Chloe, I walked over to the fridge and forcefully yanked out the plug.
Hey, what are you doing?
This is mine. I bought it. I began to unload the fridge, piling up all the food and beverages. Of course, the freezer wasn't an exception. The floor got a little wet, but I couldn't care less. Chloe grabbed my arm. I'm busy. I shrugged her off and went on to unplug all the appliances, carrying out whatever I could. Microwave, electric kettle, toaster, multi-cooker, washing machine, dishwasher, robot vacuum. I smiled at the shocked Matthew. Most of my paycheck went into these appliances to lighten your load around the house. Didn't you notice? That's right. Most of the appliances here I purchased. But not just that. Mom, I got it down! Ava came down holding a ceiling light. Thanks, please get the ones downstairs next. Ava grabbed the step stool and reached for the living room light. Matthew and Brian looked puzzled, probably because they'd been drinking. Oh well, let me explain. Also the air conditioners, lights, and large furniture around the house, I bought those, remember? Matthew seemed to snap back to reality.
Please stop. Just stop.
No way. I opened the closet, packed full of Chloe and Brian's clothes. I'm only taking what's mine. Without giving them a chance to respond, I grabbed their clothes and tossed them on the floor. High-end brands or not, I couldn't care less. I emptied the closet, bookshelf, and decorative shelf one by one. Oh right, my dresser. I pulled open the drawers to find makeup that probably belonged to Chloe. Such expensive stuff going to waste. I can't be bothered to take it out one by one. So be it. All right, here we go. Flipping over each drawer, just like that, they're empty. Phew, feels good. Chloe's face is pale as she scrambles to gather her makeup. Mom, the movers are here. Ava calls out to me loudly. Show them around. Tell them to start moving things. I hear Ava responding to the movers in an energetic voice. She's acting way more mature than the flustered adults in front of her. Sorry for the mess. Just go ahead and start moving stuff. The movers are clearly professionals. Our home empties at an incredible speed.
Oh, my.
What's left are a few pieces of furniture and a pile of abandoned food and entertainment items. Essentially, hardly anything essential to our daily life remains. Well then, see you later. After waving goodbye to the truck, Ava and I catch our breaths. I take an envelope from Ava and tell her to go to grandparents' house. Just then, a loud yell comes from behind. Startled, Ava shakes her shoulders. I urge her to go and then turn around. It's not just the alcohol. My in-laws and Matthew are red-faced and shaking with rage.
How could you do something so horrible?
I did exactly as I said I would. Now it's time for all of you to sort out your moving arrangements.
What?
All three shout in disbelief. Pathetic. Don't you remember? I own this property and this house. Matthew's face instantly turns pale.
You're not saying you sold this house too?
That's right.
The house and land are already sold. Even though their fears were confirmed, far from celebrating, my in-laws looked defeated. Well, of course they do.
This can't be allowed.
Look, I bought this house. The loan payments? Also me. You had zero involvement. What makes you think you have any say in the sale? In fact, whether they lived with me or not, I had the authority to proceed with selling. I haven't violated any rules. Most of all, this house is practically vacant now. I doubt they could afford to restore the home to its original state, given their endless spending.
Don't worry. You have a lovely girlfriend, right? Why not go to live with her?
I can't help but laugh at Brian's desperate attempt. Feel free to try, but I wouldn't count on her.
What?
Shocked, eh? I wonder if that's what his expression means.
What do you mean?
After you left, I contacted Megan from your office. A horrible woman. Perfect for you. After I told her about your true nature and about Chloe and Brian, she said she never wants to see you again. At my words, the color drains from Matthew's face.
No way.
Matthew tries to make a call on his mobile phone, but the voice that comes through is mechanical, even though it's from the same woman. The number you have dialed is either out of service or switched off. Frustrated, Matthew and his parents don't know what to do next. I approach them and hand over an envelope I got from Ava. Here, this is from Ava.
What? You've got to be kidding.
Of course it's a letter from Ava. Her dad and grandparents are in a bind, aren't they? Matthew's face lights up instantly. Nobody mentioned a letter, but okay. They open the envelope and unfold the paper inside. The look on Matthew and his parents' face turns to shock.
What is this?
It's paperwork for child support. Drafted by a lawyer. It's a legally binding document.
You don't have to worry about splitting assets or paying alimony.
You get it now? I never made a decision about child support. Basically, it's the child's right to receive it. Matthew is speechless. You're Ava's dad. She said she's determined to go to a university she can brag about. You're paying for her tuition until she graduates. Matthew and his parents are utterly defeated. It's a little kindness I can offer. I put a pamphlet from a moving company in front of them and walk away. Fast forward a month. The money from the sale of the property was safely transferred to my bank account. I'm now living peacefully in my new place when messages begging for reconciliation start coming from Matthew. According to him, the affair got exposed at work because of the call I made. His mistress had to resign. Matthew was demoted and lost the reputation he had built up. Now he's living in a rundown company apartment in the middle of nowhere with his family. The home is full of discord, with Matthew and Brian who never lift a finger, and Chloe who always did as she pleased. Their place is filled with clutter and garbage, making living there nearly impossible. What goes around comes around, huh? I block him on all platforms, ensuring he can't reach me again. As for me, I'm back to full-time employment, and Ava is thriving. Our space is smaller but loaded with the latest appliances. With Ava's help, there's virtually no burden of housework. Ava is committed to both her studies and extracurricular activities. Even though I told her not to worry about what Chloe says, she insists on working hard for her future self. Matthew is seemingly living with his family. Maybe it's time for me to move back with my parents at the contract renewal. My parents adore Ava, their grandchild, and the feeling is mutual. Living together shouldn't be a problem. I also have the money from the settlement and property sale. Maybe I could renovate my parents' home to make it more comfortable for them and Ava. Opening my makeup drawer, I take out the new cosmetics Ava and I bought recently. I apply a calm-colored lipstick to my lips. Life lasts 100 years. My life is just starting. The me in the mirror looks happy. And yes, I'm going to keep being happy.
Did my child get born while I was on my trip? My son-in-law called with an easygoing tone, oblivious to the funeral that was about to happen. Yes, the child was safely born, I responded, being unexpectedly on the receiving end of my daughter's cell phone call. I heard him click his tongue in disappointment. Damn it. Please switch me to my wife. I'd like to talk to her directly. Your wife has passed away. What? Come to the funeral immediately. Don't joke around. That's too harsh, man. My son-in-law laughed off my words in disbelief. All of this is your fault. You must pay for it, I muttered under my breath and hung up the phone. My name is Mary, 58 years old. Just a few days ago, I had a daughter who was turning 30. Now she lies peacefully in a white coffin. I touch her cold cheek and whisper to her, Karen. But there's no response. As I look at her doll-like face, recent events replay in my mind. If only I had rushed to Karen sooner that time. Just thinking about it fills me with an unbearable regret, and tears overflow endlessly. 1 week ago, my daughter, who lives far away, called me with a worried voice. Mom, what do I do? I'm starting to feel contractions and I'm so scared. It's your first time giving birth. It's only natural you'd be scared. I called the hospital and they told me to come in when the contractions are 10 minutes apart, but I'm alone and feeling vulnerable. Isn't your husband at work and your mother-in-law living with you? However, despite knowing the due date, my son-in-law and his mother had booked a trip abroad. You'll be fine with the midwife when you give birth. The two of them left my daughter alone as she started to have contractions. I was taken aback by their callousness. I advised my daughter to take a cab to the hospital if the pain got too severe, and immediately hopped in my car. It's strange that my usually lively daughter to sound so down. My house is about a 3-hour drive from where my daughter lives, but of course I got stuck in traffic and it ended up taking me 5 hours to get there. When I finally arrived at my daughter's house, it was already dark and the surroundings were pitch black. Yet there were no lights on in the house. Did she go to the hospital? Or surely not. Shaking off an ominous feeling, I opened the front door only to find my daughter collapsed there. In a panic, I cradled her in my arms, her clothes soaking wet, seemingly due to her water breaking, and the floor was drenched as well. Moreover, her face looked so haggard it was hard to believe she was in her last month of pregnancy. I called an ambulance as I tried to suppress my trembling hands. Once we arrived at the hospital and she regained consciousness, it was determined she couldn't give birth naturally, and she was taken to the operating room. Please, let both my daughter and her baby be okay, I prayed fervently outside the operating room. After a while, I heard a baby's cry, and the doctor emerged from behind the door, informing me, "It's a healthy baby girl." Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, the doctor, with a stern face, uttered unthinkable words. "Your daughter lost a lot of blood, and her strength has been severely depleted. We need to monitor her closely for a while. Please be prepared for the worst." "What? No, that can't—" My daughter, who had just been wheeled out of the operating room and into her hospital room, was utterly exhausted. My daughter was in such a state, with countless needles in her arms and an oxygen mask on her face. The joy of my granddaughter's birth was overshadowed by concern for my daughter, Karen. Perhaps to cheer us up, the nurse allowed Karen to hold her newborn daughter. Upon doing so, Karen opened her eyes slightly and smiled, and shed tears of joy, saying, "I'm glad you were born safely." 2 days later, I was able to have a conversation with my daughter, who had regained a bit of strength. "Sorry for causing you trouble, Mom. As long as you and the baby are safe, that's all that matters. I asked my husband if I could give birth at my parents' house, but he rejected the idea. I thought he'd at least cancel his trip. He's awful for leaving you in labor like that. Yeah, I might not be able to protect the baby if things stay like this." My daughter, seeming determined, asked me for a favor. That same day, I completed what she asked, and when I reported back, Karen, looking relieved, closed her eyes and fell back asleep. "I wish she would recover. She's so pale." I prayed desperately over and over, but my hopes did not reach the heavens, and Karen's condition worsened day by day. During this time, I called her husband countless times, but all my calls went unanswered. 3 days later, despite our efforts, my daughter departed this world, leaving behind her newborn child. Karen's last words were heartbreaking. "I'm sorry for being such a failure of a daughter. Please protect the baby, Mom." She wasn't the type to say such things. "Karen, I'm sorry I couldn't get to you sooner." My heart was overwhelmed with grief and pain at losing my precious daughter, but I couldn't just wallow in sorrow. I made countless calls to my son-in-law's mobile phone to inform him of Karen's death, but he never picked up. In sheer desperation, I headed to my daughter's home to look up the phone number of the hotel she was staying at during her trip. While there, searching for anything like an itinerary, I stumbled upon my daughter's diary in a drawer. What in the world? This is horrible. The diary contained a truth far beyond my imagination. As I continued reading, I discovered the real meaning behind my daughter's words when she called herself a failure of a daughter. Overwhelmed with trembling hands and a heart that wouldn't stop shaking, I crouched down right there on the spot. I will never forgive them for causing my child such pain. I'll make them regret this. I held my daughter's diary close to my heart, making that vow with determination. Several days later, her carefree son-in-law returned my call. "I'm back in the States. It's the return of the Lord and Master. Has the baby been born safely?" "Yes, the baby is full of life." This is my wife's phone, right? The voice seems different." "Oh, you're right. It's been a while, Richard. I'm Karen's mother." "Oh, it's my mother-in-law. You should have said so sooner. Hurry up and let me talk to Karen." "I'm afraid I can't do that. Our daughter has passed away." "What?" "It's your fault for leaving her alone when her labor started." "She's dead? Don't joke around." "The funeral is about to start. If you feel any remorse, come right now." I just informed him of the location of the funeral and immediately ended the call. He rang back immediately, but I didn't want him disturbing my farewell to my daughter, so I ignored him and turned off my phone. When the time came, the funeral was carried out solemnly. "I'm so sorry, Karen. It must have been hard for you, and I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner." Tears kept falling no matter how I tried to wipe them away. Next to me, I could see my husband biting his lip, keeping his head down, desperately holding back his tears. After the cremation, as I was carefully holding the small box with Karen's ashes, her husband and her mother-in-law finally arrived. They were shocked to see the sorrow-filled faces of those present. Furthermore, it seemed they had come straight from the airport. Her husband was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and her mother-in-law had on a large-brimmed straw hat with her sunglasses still on. My husband's face turned into that of a demon's. "What's with that disrespectful attire? Can't you at least dress appropriately for a funeral?" "Well, we had to hurry because of what you said." Before making any excuses, apologized to our daughter, sincerely. Then, her son-in-law, rather than breaking down in front of her portrait as I thought he would, let out a snort and chuckled. "I should be the one receiving an apology. Who's going to take care of the house now? Anybody can give birth." She was an utterly hopeless wife. What a despicable thing to say. "I'm just telling it like it is." His mother, sitting next to him, fervently nodded. "That's right." Angry, my hand tightened up into a fist, my nails digging into my skin, a sharp pain shooting up. My usually gentle husband had an uncharacteristically fierce look in his eyes, a sight I had never seen before. Yet, he didn't seem bothered by it. "So, did she have a girl?" "Yes." "I knew it. If only you could have given me a boy to carry on the family name. You're just a useless, incompetent daughter-in-law." I gritted my teeth, suppressing the urge to lash out at him. "I don't need the kid. Raise it yourselves." That was the plan from the start. Besides, you and Karen's divorce was already finalized. "What? Divorce?" "I submitted the divorce papers at Karen's request. You wrote them yourself, right? Used them as a threat?" Karen, who had been tolerating all sorts of abuse because she believed her child needed a father, had entrusted me with the divorce papers because she feared she couldn't protect the child. Karen won custody, so we will take responsibility for raising the child. "You went and filed the papers without permission? But since Karen's gone, by default, I get custody. I'll raise the kid, so pay up child support." "Do you understand what you're saying?" "Yeah, hand over the kid. I'll take care of her for free. Just pay me." "How despicable. We've already applied for guardianship, so you're the one who's going to pay child support." "Huh? You're greedier than I thought. But I have Karen's life insurance payout. I can afford to pay around $1,000. I was taken back by my son-in-law's words. It sounded like he had planned for Karen to pass away first. "Wait, you mean—" "Everything went according to plan. Karen finally made herself useful, huh? Ha ha. So you deliberately left our daughter?" "Well, yeah." I was so shocked I nearly collapsed. but my husband caught me in the nick of time. Even he was shaking his shoulders in disbelief, whispering, "I can't believe it." The relatives around us started to whisper and exchange glances. When I told my mother-in-law the baby was a girl, she yelled at me, "You can't even give me a grandson. You're such a useless daughter-in-law." My husband told me, "You're a total failure. A hopeless woman. Disgusting." I was really sad, but I thought they'd love the baby once she was born, so I have to endure it for now. I took my daughter's diary out from my bag and began to read. In the scorching midsummer sun, my mother-in-law made me go shopping. When I got back, she immediately made me pull weeds from the garden. She kept ordering me around, even making me redo dinner if she didn't like it. I don't know what to do. All the reasons for my daughter's exhaustion during her last month of pregnancy were written in the diary. "How dare you take that without permission? You're nothing but a thief. And you made sure we couldn't contact her. Our daughter wanted to come home for the birth, but you made her give up and left her alone. She must have felt so helpless." "I don't care about any of that." They seemed to show no sign of remorse, appearing completely oblivious to the depth of their sins. That's when a thunderous roar from my husband echoed across the room. Enough is enough. Our anger, as well as that of our relatives, was insatiable. We made them prostrate themselves right there on the spot. My son-in-law, finally realizing his situation, changed his attitude, as though flipping the palm of his hand. Okay, I get it. Just give me a break already." "Oh, this isn't over. The president of the company you work for knows what you did to our daughter. You're likely to be fired." "What? Why?" "The president and I are old classmates. It's a small world." And not just that, the neighbors know too. When I went to my daughter's house, a concerned neighbor had approached me. I told him about Karen's death and explained everything that had happened. "Feel the weight of your sins and live the rest of your life in regret." "There's no need to go that far." As they slumped in defeat, I relayed another important piece of information. "Also, I am the beneficiary of my daughter's life insurance." "What? Why is that?" My son-in-law and his mother exchanged a look of utter shock. I found a piece of paper in my daughter's diary. It was a life insurance document. My daughter had changed the beneficiary to me without telling anyone. "I bet it's a real bummer seeing all of your plans fall apart." "Seriously, I was counting on that money." "Also, I've already filed a report with the police for abandoning your responsibility to protect. It'll be quite troublesome since you've added the crime of leaving our daughter for the purpose of receiving the life insurance money." "The police? Please, spare me! Forgive me!" Pale and trembling, my son-in-law and his mother were prostrating themselves on the floor, but I had absolutely no intention of forgiving them. "I will never forgive you. Experience the depths of that." Soon, a police car that one of our relatives had called had arrived. As they were being taken away, the two cried pitifully. Everyone present watched them with cold eyes. Afterward, I hired a lawyer to claim child support from my son-in-law and his mother. I am praying they will be severely punished for driving our daughter to death. Regardless of the crimes they're charged with, they'll never be able to live a peaceful life as they once did. The unemployed son-in-law and his mother, who will forever be pointed at by the neighbors. The baby my daughter gave birth to is now being raised by us. The life insurance money that was paid out will all be used for the baby's life. The sadness of losing my daughter will never disappear, but there are many moments when I feel saved just by seeing this child smile. From now on, I will shower this child with the love that my daughter was unable to express.
Wouldn't it have been embarrassing to have a painting like that on the front porch? My daughter-in-law Macy, who had sold my prized painting on a flea market app without my permission, stated flatly. My mother had done a colored pencil drawing of Gerberas for me from her hospital bed before she died. That drawing was a memento of my late mother. I know, but I can't hang an amateur drawing because it's too shabby. Do you think you should talk to me like that, even though you are my daughter-in-law? I said boldly, but Macy was unfazed. She drew her arms across her chest and stared at me. Please consider your position. We will be taking care of you in the future, right? It's that deciding line again. So you're allowed to sell my belongings without my permission? I'm your one and only son's wife. Think about how much we are going to take care of you. Macy gave me one more look before walking out the door, her luxury brand shoes clacking. I'd be moving into a new house alone the next day. Macy knew this and sold the painting to harass me. Henry, my son, and Macy, my daughter-in-law, had sold my belongings without my permission before. I was furious but resigned to the fact that I would never get them back. But I'll never forgive her for selling my mother's mementos. Both Macy and Henry, who was always at her disposal, irritate me. I'll completely cut ties from my son and wife when I move into my new house tomorrow. My husband, son, and wife can live in this old house. I am Amy, a 50-year-old housewife. For years, I did all of the housework while working part-time at a factory. I look after my family, which includes my husband, my only son, and as of 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law, Macy. My mother, who raised me as a single mother, died 6 months ago. She left me a large sum of money from her life insurance policy. I took advantage of the opportunity to purchase a small, new house and decided to divorce my husband, with whom I had a strained relationship. The day before I moved in, Macy sold my mother's painting without my permission. When I told my husband we were splitting up, he simply said, "Do whatever you want." During our many years as a couple, our relationship had cooled. I believe neither of us did anything wrong and that what happened was unavoidable. My son and his wife, who lived with us, were the ones who were against my leaving. Who will do the housework if you leave? Aren't you a housewife? I am a civil servant like Henry, so I am not like you who only works part-time. It's appalling to hear a mother throw her family out of the house. My son and his wife both continued to complain as I was packing. First and foremost, why are you buying a house now? It's the money my mother left me, and it's up to me what I do with it. When the insurance money arrives, you should put it to good use for your family. A house where you'll live alone is a squandering of money. She's right. You should have shared grandmother's insurance money with us. Henry's wife was a brand-obsessed woman who never washes a single pair of underwear and is constantly taking dance, yoga, English conversation, and other classes. My son, who is at her beck and call, blames me all at the same time. This was enough for me. My friend Jane, who lives near my new house, invited me over the night I moved in to join her for dinner. My husband is out drinking today too, so I thought it would be perfect. Thank you very much. I still haven't unpacked anything. Jane's house is magnificent. She and her husband both love dogs, so they built a house to accommodate a large dog. In fact, 3 Dobermans are currently resting quietly in the living room's corner. I told Jane about Henry and Macy while eating a hamburger she had prepared for me. What's the deal with your daughter-in-law? And I'm sorry, but your son is also pitiful. Henry used to be a stronger person, but now he's at the mercy of his wife. I'm tired of it. One of the large dogs approached me and nuzzled my feet, as if to console me. It was Hannah, the female of the 3 Dobermans. Hannah is much gentler than my son. All of our dogs are smart and good. Jane used to be a trainer because she's so good with dogs. Her 3 new dogs are large and scary in appearance, but are really gentle and extremely intelligent. They would never attack anyone, but they will bark at uninvited guests if Jane instructs them to. I wish I had a dog as gentle as Hannah is. Why don't you get yourself one? I'll train it for you. Indeed, I am free to do whatever I want as of today. In a new house, you begin a new life. Isn't that right? I thought so too. Macy and I are moving to my parents' house next month. At the end of the month, my son called me with this news. I'd just gotten used to living alone and was starting to enjoy my independence. Your parents' house? Oh, you're moving to Macy's parents' house? No, it's my mother's house. My home? You already live at your father's house. I wasn't sure what he was saying. I talked with Macy. After all, my parents' house is my mother's house, not my father's, and we decided to move to your house. No, my house isn't big enough for the three of us. I was not going to put up with Henry and Macy bossing me around and making me do all of the housework. But one of the rooms does have a place to sleep. You can sleep in the living room corner, and we can use that space as our bedroom. Don't be ridiculous. What are you talking about? You want me to sleep in the living room corner? I could feel my face getting hot with rage. We're coming, even if you don't like it. I'll start by shipping you a couple of boxes. I'm not going to accept them. Well, then, I'll think of something. Anyway, I'm coming, so please, look after me, Henry said, and abruptly hung up the phone. I don't want this. I despise the idea of Henry and Macy bossing me around and forcing me to do all the housework. That is something I will not allow to happen. The next day, Jane and I went to a family restaurant. I wanted her to listen to my story. I'm sorry, but you have the worst son and daughter-in-law. As she sipped her latte, Jane continued, You must not accept it under any circumstances. You must politely say no. Well, since it is those two, they might hire a moving company. I don't know what to do. To wash down my pitiful feelings, I drank a sip of jasmine tea. I enjoy this tea, but it is quite bitter. Well, it is difficult to say no when the movers will come. If we're not careful, we might get into trouble. We have to do something to make them not want to come to my house. I can't stand the way they're acting. Well, we could ask my children for help. What, Hannah and the dogs? Hannah, Sun, and Sky are Jane's 3 kids, her 3 beloved Dobermans. My dogs will bark, growl, and act out to some extent on command. I could ask them to scare them away or something. In fact, my son has been afraid of dogs since he was a child. It's difficult to live with a son and his wife who would sell their mother's mementos without permission. So let's come up with something. I agree. Thank you very much, Jane. I felt a little relieved as a result of our conversation. When I returned home, I discovered that my son and his wife were serious. 2 large cardboard boxes had been stacked in front of the front door. These are Henry's and my possessions. We thought you would refuse the courier, so I brought them. We will move in next month, so please keep them in the house. Macy. My shoulders slumped as I read the note attached to the cardboard box. I had no choice but to bring the box inside, and when I opened it, I discovered many of their personal belongings. Henry's imported watches and leather jackets. Macy's designer bags, clothes, and shoes. They must have left behind valuable items I would not discard without permission. What a dirty move. How little they must think of me to sell off my mother's paintings or leave this luggage without my permission. Well, we could ask my children for help. Jane's voice from the family restaurant came to mind. I've occasionally accompanied Jane on dog walks since I settled in after the move. She invites me to accompany her for a change of scenery. She's a great friend to have. It means a lot to me. Why don't you sell their belongings? Macy would sell them on her own, wouldn't she? Yes, even the memento my mother painted. Moon, a male dog, looks at me from the end of the leash I am holding. By the way, why do your son and wife want to live with you? They're both government employees and have money, so why don't they just live together? They don't like doing housework, especially Macy because she's always learning, going out to play, or watching fashion and makeup videos. So you've been doing all the housework by yourself? Yes, my husband never did it, and Henry works overtime and travels a lot, and Macy is the same way. I recall hearing a conversation between my son and his wife on the day I announced my departure from our home. If you leave the house, who will do the housework? Well, you can. No, obviously not. I want your mother to do it. Jane sighed in disgust when I mentioned this. It wasn't until a week later that I received several phone calls from Macy. I finally answered in disgust after she phoned dozens of times. Your house is quite small, right? Yes, that's what I said. Henry said he saw you with 3 big dogs, and I wonder if 3 dogs like that could live in a small house. It struck me. Macy is obviously terrified of dogs. There are people all over the world who are terrified of dogs. One of them is Henry. Jane must have been with me when Henry saw her, but he must have been completely distracted by the dogs. I told you it's a small house. If you're worried, why don't you come back and take a look? I will. I want to check the inside of the house. Macy's voice unraveled a little. She decided that there was no dog in the house. Anyway, I'll be there this Sunday at 10 a.m., Macy said and hung up the phone. Okay. Unexpectedly, I can take my revenge now. On Sunday, Henry and Macy came to my house as planned. You really came? I said I would come. You know, it's because you bought the house on a whim that we're in this messy situation. That's really true. You should have stayed quiet and continued to do the housework like before. Complaining, they took off their shoes and entered the house. Okay, that's it. I opened the living room door, gloating in my mind. Whoa! Ah! The next moment, my son and his wife screamed in unison. There were 2 Dobermans, Moon and Sky, sitting there. What? Are you kidding me? Mother, this dog. These are my dogs. Aren't they cute? Jane, the dog trainer over there, found them for me. Jane, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up and smiled at me. They are so cute because they are well trained. Moon, Sky, how do you say hello to our guests? The dogs barked at the same time. Macy said, "Oh no!" Macy sat down with her head in her hands. Is she that bad with dogs? Oh, they are so cute. Don't worry, Moon, Sky, play with them. At the sound of Jane's voice, the 2 dogs ran over to Henry and Macy, respectively. They raised their paws, wagging their tails as if to say, "Let's play." Stop! Oh no, I'm scared! Macy shook her head and began to wriggle and shake. Moon just invited her to play with him, but Macy doesn't understand. I'm scared of dogs. Macy just lost it and burst into tears, snot running out of her nose. Oh dear, if you're going to live in my house, you'll have to get along with these kids too. Make them stop! This ruined the makeup she had studied on YouTube and was so proud of. Her mascara was running and the lame from her eyeshadow spread to her cheeks. Her tears and runny nose made the high-end foundation look soggy. With this face, she was going to take the train home. Hey, Mom, do something about it. Meanwhile, Henry, who had been jostled by the much larger Sky, fell on his backside and began to scoot away. Sky, thinking that he was playing, happily jumped on Henry. No, stop it. The dog is too big and scary. I suddenly looked at Henry's jeans and saw that the color of his crotch had darkened a bit. He was so afraid of the dog that he had peed himself. How pathetic. Moon, Sky, come here. Jane decided it was time to stop and called the dogs. Immediately, the 2 dogs left Henry and Macy and returned to her. Moon, Sky, down. With that one word, the dogs lay down at Jane's feet. They really are smart kids. Until now, even though I've been slaving away at my part-time job and housework, you've never helped me. Besides, when I said I was going to leave, you decided to live on your own. Do you think your mother is stupid? I spat out the words I had been holding back as my son and his wife stood up, crying. I left home because I was fed up with you. I am not your housekeeper. But doesn't that mean you have to? He's a well-trained and smart dog, and much gentler than you. Henry and Macy lacked their usual air of bravado. A husband with a wet crotch and a wife whose makeup is a mess. They make the perfect couple. You also sold off my precious things without my permission. I will never forgive you for selling my mother's painting. I said it at once and looked at Moon and Sky, who were meekly lying face down, before looking at my son and his wife again. This, a house with 2 dogs this big, is something we don't want. That's right, we'll give up moving. So give me back the stuff we left behind the other day, then we'll go home. They're still in the boxes in the next room. Take it and get out of here. As I pointed to the next room, Henry and Macy took a wide turn to avoid the dog before opening the door. And... whoa! Ah! They both screamed again and fell on their butts. That's right, because another Doberman, Hannah, was sitting right next to the boxes in the room. Mom, the boxes. Please get them. I don't want to. You brought it yourself, so take it yourself. I peeked into the room and saw Hannah just sitting there with a calm expression on her face. I can't go near a dog like that. Then give up your stuff. You mean I should leave it? My bags and Henry's watches are in that box. You also got rid of my precious things without my permission, didn't you? I didn't ask you to leave them behind. I'm telling you, take it with you. Macy just glared at me for a moment. But then, perhaps remembering the dog's presence, she lowered her eyes with a sigh. Please, Mother, bring us the boxes. You and Macy have been making fun of me. You knew how important that painting that she sold off was to me, but you didn't stop her. Well, I'm sorry about that, but at that time, Jane came to me. Hannah, how do we greet our guests? Immediately, Hannah sat down and barked loudly. No! Stop it! Hearing Hannah's voice, the son and his wife must have reached their limit. With his wet jeans and her face covered in smudged makeup, they ran to the front door and got out of the house. After that, I sold all the personal belongings Henry and Macy had left behind to a pawn shop. I discovered that their belongings were of considerable luxury, with Henry's watch having a surprisingly high value and Macy's bag being of a particularly high class. The extravagance of these items left me in a state of dismay. Back at her house, Macy ended up being responsible for all the household chores. My former husband does not like Macy's housework. He constantly complains that the food is bad, the house is dirty, and the laundry is piled up. Macy can no longer go to her lessons because of her housework, and she has gained 10 kilograms due to the stress. And all of her frustration seems to be directed at Henry. Mom, I'm at my limit. Macy finally started hitting me. She's been fighting with Dad all the time. I want a divorce. One day, Henry called me, his voice exhausted. You chose your own wife, didn't you? You can take care of yourself. Of course, I would not give advice to Henry. I was sick and tired of being involved with that couple. Meanwhile, I bought a female Shiba Inu and asked Jane to train her. She's going to be a great dog. Jane smiled as she patted the head of the puppy I named Rio. Really, it's all thanks to you. I'm sorry for making the dogs play such an unpleasant role. That's okay. When I heard what you said, I was more upset than you were. But from now on, you and Rio can live together peacefully. Yes, from now on, I will enjoy my life and my time. With this determination in my heart, I gently picked up the puppy.
There's no job for someone with such low education. What can a person without any real learning do?
My boss said this while laughing, mocking me, a woman who grew up in a single-parent household. I had been working hard all this time for my mom, who raised me single-handedly. He never recognized my efforts and even belittled my mom.
Even worse, when my mom passed away, my boss not only spoke cold words, but also, I'm Sarah, a 28-year-old woman working in a small to medium-sized business. Raised in a single-parent household, I joined the company right after high school as a part-timer and am now working as a full-time employee. The company I work for is of considerable size despite being a small to medium-sized enterprise with a significant number of employees. Initially, I started working part-time, but have fought hard, almost as if my life depended on it. Thanks to that effort, I was recognized by my boss, and I managed to become a full-time employee in my 3rd year. After becoming a full-time employee, I continued to work hard, just like when I was part-time, not wanting to disappoint those who believed in me. By the time I was 25, I was given more responsible tasks compared to my peers of the same age, and I was gaining trust from the company. I was also receiving decent pay and bonuses, allowing me to take care of my mom and live a cherished life. Then, one day, my direct boss was due to retire, and a new boss was to be assigned. It was very sad not to be able to work with the boss who had recognized me and nurtured me, and I had some slight anxiety about getting along with the new boss. But I was achieving results at work, and everyone in the company was kind. Above all, the retiring boss told me he would speak to the new boss about me, so I didn't worry too much. Then, the day of the new boss's first day came after my old boss retired. That day, I was called by the new boss, Christopher. I thought he wanted to talk individually with the person who would become his subordinate, so I headed to the designated conference room. But there, I was thrown unbelievable words by Christopher.
Are you Taylor? The high school graduate from a single-parent household who went from part-time to full-time?
Certainly, the Taylor they were referring to in the resume is me. But I was utterly shocked when they brought it up out of the blue. What on earth does this person want to talk about with me? Their attitude wasn't light or conversational. It was intimidating, like they were judging me. My first impression of this boss, who came at me with such a high-handed attitude, was the worst. But I knew we would be working together for a long time, and I didn't want it to affect our future work. Yes, I am Taylor. I look forward to working with you. I greeted the boss with a smile, trying to brush off their comment. I still didn't know what kind of person this Christopher was. I thought it best to handle the situation calmly. But Christopher continued to barrage me with unkind words.
A single-parent household upbringing, huh? You probably can't work. You didn't even go to college. What can an uneducated person like you do?
I was more than surprised by the statement. I was dumbfounded. It's true that I was raised in a single-parent household and only graduated from high school, but I am the one who has been performing well in this department. I admit I am not highly educated, but I am producing results in my job. I may only have a high school diploma, but I believe I'm achieving good results. I explained to Christopher that I might have shortcomings, but I am still delivering results.
I noticed that, but it seems like your previous boss liked you quite a bit, right? He looked crude and lecherous to me. Perhaps you seduced him to get good results.
Christopher started saying something baseless, as if there's no way someone like me with a high school education could do the job. That's not true. My previous boss took a special interest in me, but he only guided me so that I could do my job properly. Of course, there was no truth to what Christopher was saying, and I couldn't keep quiet after being insulted about my former boss who had nurtured me. I didn't understand why he could berate me, a complete stranger, so much, but it must have been his inherent personality. The thought of having to work with such a boss in the future weighed heavily on me. Christopher was smirking at me, and it became clear that he didn't like me at all. But if I could prove my worth in front of this boss, there would be no more room for complaints. From what I heard, this boss truly believes in meritocracy. I decided there was no other choice but to use that to my advantage and work even harder. Then, just as I was returning to the office from field work, it happened.
Hey, where have you been?
No sooner had I returned to the office than Christopher started yelling at me. I was out on field work? I had noted on the schedule that I would be out on field work today. Confused as to why I was being yelled at, Christopher deliberately came over to me.
You're no good at your job, so you might as well do the menial tasks. Organize these documents,
he said, handing over a massive stack of papers. It wasn't my job and I didn't have the time to spare for it. But I couldn't defy the boss's orders, so I reluctantly began to organize the documents. Christopher looked at me with a satisfied expression as I quietly sorted the papers. Perhaps because I obeyed his command, he began piling daily chores on me from that day on. Whenever I tried to do my job, I was accused of being a payroll thief for not doing the assigned work, or yelled at for hours over minor mistakes. He even insulted me, saying,
"You can't work because you come from a single-parent household."
Until now, I found satisfaction in my work by producing results and being recognized by the company. I was earning enough, providing for Mom, and living without complaints. But now, I feel stressed every single day. I have to live, and quitting my job now would worry Mom. I wanted to avoid that at all costs, so I desperately continued to work. One day, Mom came to me with a request. She wanted to find part-time work. Even though I was paying for living expenses and supporting her, she apparently didn't plan on being taken care of forever. She was considering when I might get married and wanted to save some money for herself. I couldn't afford to refuse it either, so I decided to talk to the company. Fortunately, they were hiring an office worker at the time, so it was a perfect fit. It had nothing to do with my department, so I shouldn't have to deal with that horrible boss. After consulting, I was immediately interviewed, and Mom was successfully hired. And so, Mom started working as an office worker at the same company where I work. Mom was happy with the comfortable workspace, saying that going to work every day was enjoyable. But a week after Mom started working, I was called by Christopher.
Your mom got hired as an office worker? That short woman? Is she the one who raised you as an uneducated idiot?
Christopher always looks at me with a nasty expression, making fun of Mom too. I don't know why he knew about Mom, who had taken an office job without speaking to him, but my stress more than doubled. It was more unbearable to have Mom spoken ill of than myself. Above all, I was worried and restless, wondering if Christopher would say something directly to Mom. I didn't want to make Mom feel bad. However, contrary to my worries, everything seemed to be going smoothly with Mom. As I had feared, Christopher occasionally came to make snide comments, but Mom is a strong woman who raised me all by herself. It seems that such things don't bother her at all.
It's like a child's insult.
Mom laughed. I was relieved by Mom's strength, as she didn't seem to care about Christopher at all. Even after that, Mom didn't pay any attention to Christopher and enjoyed working in her new environment. Then one day, something happened. Mom collapsed and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Fortunately, her life was not in danger, but she had to be hospitalized for a while. Because of the sudden incident, I decided to take some time off from work to take care of Mom. However, when I told Christopher about it, he had an outrageous reaction.
Huh? You plan to take time off for something so trivial? You must be taking your job lightly.
Christopher, with an exaggerated sigh, made it clear that he would not allow any time off. I'll use the paid leave that I haven't used yet. After all, I'm the only one there for Mom. Permission for this leave had already been obtained from someone higher up than Christopher. They were more than willing to grant me the time off, especially since I had seldom taken any before. But no matter how I explained it, Christopher would not be convinced.
It's not about that. Just leave an old woman whose life is short anyway.
I was thrown a thoughtless comment, and I could feel my blood rushing to my head. Why would he say something like that when I'm telling him Mom has collapsed? I have endured everything he said until now, but I finally reached my breaking point. I can't work under such a person anymore. Once I thought that, I couldn't hold myself back. I knew it might be a hassle for others, but since Christopher came, all I was assigned was menial tasks. Having lost all motivation and given up, I immediately told Christopher that I was quitting. His reaction was one of surprise as he said,
You don't have to go that far.
Trying to stop me. He must have been afraid it would become an issue that he caused me to quit. But of course, my feelings didn't change. I had enough savings and I could live on that for a while. Ignoring Christopher, I quit my job on the spot and devoted myself to taking care of Mom. Eventually, things settled down with Mom's care, and I decided to re-enter the workforce. I thought about doing the same kind of work as before, but I, having been successful and confident in my abilities, chose otherwise. Having learned a lot about business management from my retired former boss, I took the plunge and decided to start my own company. I wanted to tell Mom after things had settled down, so I struck out on my own. About a year passed, and the company was beginning to stabilize. Suddenly, Mom's condition worsened, and she had to be hospitalized again. I was caught between taking care of Mom and running my business, but I managed to handle both without taking any time for myself. Thanks to that effort, another year went by, and the company was on a solid track, reassuring me of its stability. Although Mom's condition hadn't improved, I wanted to ease her mind, so I was thinking about telling her soon. But then, Mom passed away. It was a truly sudden event, and it didn't feel real. But the sad truth was that Mom had undeniably passed away. Being an only child, I had no other family, so I had to prepare to say goodbye to Mom without time to grieve. Holding back tears, I proceeded with various arrangements. Although I hadn't worked as a clerk for very long, many people who had been friendly with Mom at the company where I worked were willing to attend her funeral. Maybe it was because of Mom's personality, but they wanted to be there. And on the day of the funeral, more people attended than I had expected. It must have been due to Mom's popularity. Despite the pain of losing Mom, I was filled with pride knowing that so many people had come out for her. However, just as the funeral was about to end, the sight of one particular attendee caught my eye.
Long time no see. So that old woman finally kicked the bucket, huh?
I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the infuriating figure of Christopher standing there. Though he may have had some interaction with Mom, I had no recollection of inviting this man to the funeral. No matter what, I would never invite someone like him to Mom's funeral. My old boss was smirking at my stunned expression. The very same face he made when he belittled our single-parent household. Those unpleasant memories came flooding back. I could do nothing but glare at Christopher's face. Christopher approached me, handing me a bunch of flowers.
Here, some flowers. She might have been the sort of woman who couldn't provide her daughter with a proper education, but at least I can do this much.
How could he act like this at someone's funeral? I almost yelled out loud in anger, but I clenched my emotions. I don't want to ruin Mom's funeral or inconvenience the other mourners. I accepted the flowers in silence. But, unbelievably, the flowers looked like something he had picked up off the street. Had this man come all the way just to pull off such a nasty trick? As Christopher saw my face, he grinned even more maliciously. That moment, my suppressed emotions came out. I couldn't stay silent after having my precious Mom ridiculed so much.
This is how you feel about me then. I understand. In that case, I'll have to call off our business deal with your company.
Christopher stared blankly at me as I said this.
Huh? Deal? What are you talking about?
My foolish former boss looked clueless, not understanding what I meant. So I explained to him, politely, the meaning behind the words I had just uttered. So this is a matter of business with my company. I've been asked by my colleagues and seniors in the sales department to sign quite a lot of contracts. But I want to terminate all those contracts. I want to rethink our relationship with a company that has someone like you, I declared. At first, my former boss didn't believe me, but the next day he sent a written notice to Christopher's company. Christopher, upon seeing it, looked quite pale. He never expected that I had started a business and succeeded, so he came to apologize immediately with the president.
I'm sorry,
Christopher said, his attitude hardly apologetic. My anger did not subside.
You're sorry? You think that's enough? Insulting my mom while she was alive, only giving me menial tasks. And what about the funeral? You think everything until now can be made right with such a shallow apology?
As I continued to speak, Christopher looked at a loss for words. Beside him, the president who had come along apologized deeply.
I am so sorry for not noticing,
he said, tears welling in his eyes. I had been greatly helped by the president, so I felt terrible. In the end, out of respect for the president, I decided to continue the business relationship. Hearing me and the president talk, Christopher wore a relieved expression.
Oh, what a relief. Let the bygones be bygones and move forward together,
he said, offering a ridiculous smile and extending his hand for a handshake. He must have thought we had reconciled, but it wasn't such an easy situation.
You're fired, Christopher,
the president announced right in front of me.
What? Fired? Why? I got forgiveness and we're continuing the deal,
Christopher protested to the president, looking disbelieving. The president had decided to fire Christopher, knowing I would not be satisfied continuing the business relationship this way. I only decided to continue the deal out of respect for the president. I never intended to forgive you. I will never forgive you no matter what you say, I said, as if delivering the final blow. Christopher fell completely silent.
It's the result of your own words and actions,
President spoke as if tossing his words aside and then left, dragging a completely dejected Christopher with him. The next day, it seems that my former boss really was fired from the company. Afterward, I received a resentful call from Christopher. He lamented losing his position and the fact that finding a new job at his age would be difficult.
You've ruined my life. Take responsibility for what's happened,
he yelled over the phone. I made a proposal to the furious Christopher. How about I hire you at my company? I can't pay you much, but it seems like you're out of a job because of me. When I said that, taking responsibility as he demanded, he suddenly exploded with emotion and hung up. Being employed by someone he had ridiculed must have been a complete humiliation. I knew he probably wouldn't accept this offer. But a month later, apparently unable to find another job, Christopher asked me to hire him, abandoning all his pride. Honestly, I was surprised, but I decided to hire Christopher. Then, I made him experience the same humiliation I had endured as an employee.
Hey, why do I have to do these menial tasks? Anyone could do this.
Now that our positions were reversed, Christopher began to complain. But I kept him on menial tasks, giving him no responsible work. At your age, to be fired for incompetence? I can't imagine you'd be able to handle real work. Besides, the boss's orders are absolute, so you can't defy them, please, I said coldly. Christopher looked downcast. He looked entirely different from the arrogant person he was at his previous workplace, and his appearance was extremely shameful. Soon after, Christopher quit the company. He probably couldn't endure the humiliating treatment from me, but it was all something he had done to me. Doing to others what you hate being done to yourself is just nonsensical. Not understanding such a simple thing eventually leads to a difficult situation where everything is lost. By the way, my company is still growing steadily and doing reasonably well. Persistent effort will surely bring results, and without it, only modest success will follow. Whether you end up like Christopher or not is truly up to you, I believe.
Hello? Hey, how many times do I have to tell you? Keep the noise down when you open and close the door. What? I'm sorry. Was it really that loud? If it wasn't, I wouldn't be calling, would I? Seriously? How many times do I need to repeat myself? The call was abruptly ended. Despite the brief exchange, it was utterly draining. How many times had I had this same conversation with our next-door neighbor? My family and I aren't trying to be loud. My name is Leone, 37 years old. I work in sales administration for a medical equipment company. My husband Larry is on a solo assignment overseas, so it's just my 13-year-old son Steve and me at home. We live in an older apartment, but the location is great, so we love it. But there's one recent problem. A woman who moved in next door keeps lodging complaints against us. Even this weekend, the doorbell rang repeatedly, and I approached it with trepidation. How many times do I need to tell you to be quiet when you open and close the door? I'm really sorry. I wasn't trying to slam it. That's not my problem. Just be considerate, alright? Seriously. She just yelled and left. Her name is Dina. She's a housewife in her 40s with a high school-aged child. I remember feeling a bit intimidated by her sharp gaze when we first met. As I expected, the aggressive complaints are non-stop, especially on weekends. I told you not to stomp around in your apartment. It's so disruptive. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful. Come on. It's not just you living here. I genuinely believe we aren't causing any noise disturbances. Of course, my son Steve is a quiet kid, probably even quieter than the other units. In reality, I secretly think Dina's place is way more of a nuisance. Her high school-aged daughter, Vivian, loves blasting her music, and the sound leaks terribly. Even Dina's phone conversations are so loud they penetrate our walls, yet they turn a blind eye to their noise, while always pointing fingers at us. Especially in an old apartment, it's essential to be considerate of each other. It's bad enough when she rings the doorbell, but it's genuinely terrifying when she bangs on our front door. Your conversation is too loud. Please lower your voice. Yes, I'll be careful. Sorry. You know my legs are bad. It's already a hassle just to come out here. I see. So don't make me come to your door every time. Just give me your cell phone number. Okay. From that day on, the complaints started coming over the phone. I deeply regretted giving out my number on impulse. No matter if it was a weekday or a weekend, she didn't care. Turn down the TV! I can faintly hear it and it's driving me crazy. Yes, sorry. Is this volume okay? Keep all the noises down to this level. Seriously. I heard from the landlord that Dina's husband is also working away from home. We're in a similar situation. We should get along better, but the complaints and demands from Dina just escalated. The vacuum is too noisy. What kind are you using? Replace it. I just got a new one last week. It's supposed to be quiet. Ugh, it doesn't sound quiet. At least vacuum on Sunday mornings when I'm out shopping. With our relationship being like this, there's no way our kids would get along. One day, when Steve sneaked back into the house... What happened, Steve? Did someone chase you? I don't want Vivian from next door to see me. She might get rough. Rough? Did she do something to you? She's too hands-on, and she tries to get me to buy her soda with my allowance. Vivian doesn't have a great reputation. I've heard she hangs out with a group of self-centered, troublesome kids. The day after hearing that rumor, when I returned from work, Steve was sitting near our apartment entrance, hugging his knees. Steve? What happened? You can't stay out here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I lost my keys. From what he told me, Vivian and her friends confronted him on his way home from school. They dragged him to a nearby park, making him play games he didn't want to. They took things from my pockets, threw my stuff around. Oh my god! As Steve recounted, tears welled up in his eyes. For the high schoolers, it might have been just a pastime, but for Steve, it must have felt like torture. When he realized he'd lost his keys, how devastated he must have felt. He probably searched the park over and over. He must have felt so alone and scared. I couldn't contain my anger. I rushed outside and furiously rang Dina's doorbell. When Dina appeared, her eyes were cloudy. She had already been drinking. "What's up?" "My kid told me they had a run-in with your Vivian." "Really? Kids will be kids, you know. Stop making a fuss about it. I won't let this go. Ensure she doesn't bother my child again." She briskly closed the door after speaking her mind. I heard Dina shouting something, but I didn't want to hear it. From that point on, our relationship with Dina became even more strained. She began banging on our shared wall and tossing trash on our balcony. Talking to the apartment manager didn't seem to help. Dina wouldn't change her behavior. "This is quite a predicament," sighed the apartment manager, scratching his head. "I've had similar complaints about her. I've told her not to disturb the peace here, but it doesn't get through. She sure doesn't take advice well. If the apartment manager can't get through to her, what chance do I have? I guess her husband's away on business? Maybe she's just lonely," the manager pondered. "But that's no excuse to hassle the neighbors." "True, it's not right. I'll talk to her again." "Is she so lonely with her partner away that she's resorting to making complaints and drowning her sorrows in alcohol? If that's the case, it's genuinely heartbreaking. But I can't fathom dealing with stress in such a way." Yet Dina's complaints continued relentlessly. Even when we thought we were quiet, she'd always find something to nitpick. Thanks to her, we never got a moment of peace. The thought that the constant complainer next door might be eavesdropping kept us from even laughing freely. Recently, there have been loud knocks on our front door in the evenings. When we checked the security footage, it appeared to be Vivian's doing. The knocking continued until the apartment manager threatened to evict her. With such overwhelming stress, day in and day out, both Steve and I were totally drained. One day, I phoned my husband Larry, who was overseas, to fill him in on the situation. It's just, I can't believe, of all people, she moved next door. Is that what's been happening? How about Steve? Any more issues with the girl next door? I think it's better now, probably thanks to the apartment manager laying down the law. We've told Steve to consult the property manager in emergencies, like if he loses his key. I felt guilty burdening Larry with this while he was on a work trip abroad. Being away, he might worry even more, but I had to share my feelings. I felt like I'd fall apart if I didn't talk to someone. That's when Larry spoke up. "If you're feeling down, maybe you should take a break. To de-stress? De-stress? My business trip will be over soon, right? Work's been easing up. I have some free time now." "Are you suggesting?" "Yeah. What do you think? It's a great place here." A few days after that conversation, my cell phone rang. It was from Dina. I wondered what was going on and answered. "Hey! How many times do I have to tell you? The noise from the kids is too loud! Do something about it!" "What? Kids?" "Yes! Think about the neighbors! Fix this, now!" Dina sounded slurred, probably drunk. She kept shouting without really hearing me. Trying to calm her down and get her to focus was a challenge. "Please listen. I'm currently abroad with my child." "What?" "I'll hang up for a moment and contact the apartment manager." Panicking, imagining the worst, my hands trembled as I operated my phone. Fortunately, the apartment manager answered right away. "Hello? Oh yes, it's about apartment 302. Yes, that's right. Maybe..." The apartment manager had noticed something odd about my place almost at the same time I did. He found it strange that the lights were on even though I was supposed to be on a trip. He assured me he'd call back once he figured things out. About 30 minutes later, the news from the apartment manager was pretty much as I feared. The apartment was swarming with police officers, and we had no choice but to return home immediately. When my child and I arrived back at the apartment, both the apartment manager and Dina were there to greet us. Dina looked utterly defeated. "I'm so sorry for what my daughter did." Right. It was Vivian and her friends who had broken into our apartment and created chaos while we were away. After Steve had been harassed by Vivian and her crew, he realized he lost his key. Turns out Vivian had stealthily taken the key from Steve's belongings. Sometime after that, Vivian got wind that we'd be away from our apartment for a long time. She might have overheard my conversation with the apartment manager. Seeing us leave for our trip, she and her friends seized the opportunity to sneak in. They partied so hard that eventually a police officer had to step in. Our apartment was a mess. Vases and mirrors were shattered, wallpaper torn, and graffiti was everywhere. There were discarded candy wrappers, instant noodle cups, juice cartons, and plastic bottles all over. The police officer had instructed that everything be left as it was until we returned. Seeing the state of the apartment, forgiveness wasn't an easy option. Regardless of it being a child's mischief, there were clear boundaries crossed. I'm so sorry. I'll help clean up. Thank you. I'll pitch in too. We immediately began tidying up. Apart from essential communication, I hardly spoke to Dina. I wasn't the kind to get chummy after such an incident. She sensed that and focused solely on cleaning. After a while, the parents of the other kids who had trespassed along with Vivian arrived. Each one of them apologized profusely. I accepted their apologies sincerely. A police officer arrived around the same time and updated us on the details. When the police arrived, there were 4 girls in the apartment, including Vivian. All of them stopped their antics and sat down properly after a stern warning from the apartment manager. All 4 of them are over 18, so they can be held criminally responsible. I was told that the 4 of them were currently detained at the local police station. Whether they'd remain in custody would be up to the prosecutor and the judge. I had spoken to the authorities, emphasizing that these were just kids, most of them still in school. Being arrested and detained is traumatic for anyone, especially for the young ones. I believed they shouldn't face harsh penalties. The discussion shifted towards settling things outside the courtroom. The apartment manager would assess the damages for broken windows, mirrors, and wallpaper. All I had to decide was the compensation for the damages and my emotional distress. The bill would go to Vivian's mother, Dina. The financial burden would be shared equally among the 4 families, each reimbursing Dina. By the time our negotiations and cleanup were wrapping up, I saw a large black van pull into our complex. A tall, imposing man and Vivian stepped out. Could it be? My hunch was right. The man was Dina's husband. He had a strong and commanding presence and didn't seem like someone from a traditional office job. He seated both Dina and Vivian next to him and turned to me. We sincerely apologize for all the trouble my reckless wife and foolish daughter have caused. He repeatedly expressed his regret, almost to the point where I felt embarrassed. I lost count of how many times I told him it was okay and to stop apologizing. Dina and her crew left shortly after, continuously apologizing. 2 days later, Dina and Vivian moved out. I initially thought it was just the movers, but when I checked, Dina told me she was moving in with her husband. I had been reluctant because his new job is in a very rural area, and I didn't want to go, she said. But after the recent mess, she didn't feel right staying here. She decided to join her husband. If this ordeal brought their family closer together, then perhaps it was for the best. As a wife with a husband on a solo assignment, I genuinely felt that way. I sincerely hoped that living with her strong-willed husband would keep Dina on the straight and narrow, and that Vivian might mature a bit. A few days after that, with my windows and walls back in pristine condition, my husband Larry returned from his trip. My son, Steve, and I went to the airport to greet him. Larry's overseas assignment was over, and our family of 3 was together again. I wouldn't have to face any more unsettling nights alone for a long time. The recent events reminded me of the importance of having family close. Life is truly better when we're all under the same roof. That was my heartfelt realization.
I returned home after spending an extended 2 months at my parents' house following the birth of my baby. But what awaited me there was a situation I couldn't believe.
You and I are divorced. Please leave this house.
Unbeknownst to me, my husband had filed for divorce while I was away. Another woman had already made herself at home, claiming my space. Even my mother-in-law took their side, erasing me from the picture. They treated our newly born daughter as if she were an inconvenience, without even seeing her once. In an instant, I was pushed out of their lives. But I know one thing. Their future is anything but bright. My name is Cecily, and I'm 32 years old. I have been married to my husband for 3 years. Currently, I'm 9 months pregnant, with 2 months left until my due date. Meanwhile, my husband Gail is having an ongoing affair. How did I find out about his infidelity? It happened due to a series of coincidences. One day, a little after my pregnancy was confirmed, my usually busy husband forgot his mobile phone at home. I was debating whether to call him at work when a notification popped up on the lock screen. Looking forward to our date today, seeing the incoming message, I let out an involuntary shout. What is this? The message left no room for doubt. He was cheating. I knew my husband's passcode. It's the debut date of his favorite artist. That piece of information was my saving grace. I unlocked the phone and opened the messaging app. The conversation with his affair partner was pinned to the top, signaling her importance to him. The woman's name seemed to be Rilana, and there they were, exchanging love notes on a daily basis. Looking back through the chat history, their relationship started a year ago. Apparently, they first met on a dating app. Somewhere along the line, it escalated into something extraordinary. I was so shocked, my hand trembled holding my phone. Gail, how could you? My emotions are in turmoil, swinging between sadness and disbelief. The thought of divorce flashes across my mind, but I'm pregnant with Gail's child. It's unthinkable that this child could grow up without a father. But can I really turn a blind eye to Gail's affair? What if he continues this relationship even after our child is born? The worst-case scenario sends shivers down my spine. Overwhelmed by severe nausea, I hurriedly rushed to the bathroom. I have been suffering from morning sickness lately, spending most days lying down. Unable to eat properly, I'm mentally and emotionally drained. I don't have the energy to confront Gail about his affair. Raising my voice could negatively affect the baby. After much thought, I decide to ignore Gail's cheating. Of course, I'm anxious, but more than that, I want to prioritize our unborn child. Once the baby's here, I'm sure Gail will change. I desperately tell myself to calm down. Months have passed, and I'm nearing my due date. But nothing has changed about Gail continuing his relationship with the other woman. Tonight, he came home after 11 p.m. I was already on edge and I couldn't help but raise my voice. Gail, isn't it too late? I'm almost at full term, you know. He responded with an annoyed tone.
What can I do? I have work, you know.
That may be true, but even cleaning the bathroom is hard with this belly. Could you help out a little?
Oh, come on, stop nagging. You get to relax at home all day, right? I'm the one working here.
What's that supposed to mean?
It's the truth. You know what? Maybe you should go back to your parents' house early. It would be less stressful for both of us.
Are you serious? Gail, wait a minute. He walked away right in the middle of our conversation, heading straight for the bathroom. Lately, our talks have been nothing but half-hearted or limited to essential things like errands. When was the last time we had a real full conversation? I can't even remember. That's how rare our meaningful dialogues had become. Maybe he really can't stand me anymore. Ever since that day, he's been coming home even later. So there I was doing all the house chores, grocery shopping, and even getting ready for childbirth all by myself. I also kept collecting evidence of his affair. If his attitude doesn't change after the baby is born, divorce might be the only option left. I hired a private investigator to gather evidence and even look into his mistress Rilana. According to their report, Rilana had multiple affairs besides my husband. On top of that, she was pregnant. Is the child his or someone else's? Either way, this would serve as important evidence. So I kept collecting proof, preparing for the worst case scenario. Then, one day, as my due date approached, I decided to go back to my parents' house to give birth. I was in the middle of packing when my mom called. "Hello, Cecily, how are you feeling?" "Oh, Mom, the baby's kicking like crazy today. It seems like they can't wait to come out." "That's great to hear. So will Gail be coming with you? What should we prepare for dinner?" Well, what's wrong?" "I don't think Gail is coming." "What? You're not planning to travel by train alone, are you, with luggage?" My mom's concern was valid. It's a 3-hour train ride from where we live to my parents' house. Ideally, my husband would drive me, but he recently told me to go alone. My mother, raising her voice, interrogated me further. "Cecily, did something happen with Gail? It's unthinkable for a pregnant woman in her last trimester to take a train alone." "Gail must be busy. I'll be fine on my own." "But what if something happens? You can't just get off a moving train." "I'll manage. My checkups have been fine, and I've been doing the grocery shopping by myself." "Wait, you've been going shopping alone?" Yeah." Continuing the conversation would only make me more suspicious. Digging myself into a deeper hole, I decided to swiftly wrap up the conversation and hung up the phone. "Sorry, Mom, I'll call you back." Wait, Cecily! "Looking forward to coming home. Bye." Though I felt guilty, I didn't answer my mom's return calls. That evening, my husband returned from work in a surprisingly foul mood. He stormed in, tossing his bag on the floor. As soon as he saw me, he started yelling.
Hey, what's the deal? What did you tell your mom?
What do you mean?"
Got a call from your mom today. Cecily seems to be struggling. You should support her more. Now, it looks like I'm not doing anything.
"Oh, well, turns out my mother felt sorry for me and had called Gail. My decision not to take her call backfired. Gail's face turned red with anger, his teeth clenched tightly. As I was about to apologize, he cut me off.
Enough. My mom is coming over starting tomorrow.
"Your mom? Why?"
To make sure you don't mess things up. I don't need her thinking weird stuff about me. She'll take care of the house. Got it?
"But having her move in so suddenly, we would be walking on eggshells."
What? Whose fault do you think this is? Just do what you're told and realize it's your fault, you idiot.
He angrily clicked his tongue. Every time I tried to explain, he shouted,
Shut up. This is your fault.
In the end, we never had a proper discussion. The next day, his mother arrived. She had clearly been poisoned against me by my husband, and she continued to berate me. "I never thought Cecily would be so selfish. You should be grateful just to be married to Gail." "You don't understand. There is a reason." "What don't I understand? Because of you? My son has a bad image in your mother's eyes. Marrying a stupid wife like you was the mistake of a lifetime. I feel sorry for Gail." After that day, life at home became even more strained. Conversations with my husband dwindled to nearly nothing, and I was left alone with my mother-in-law during the day. She didn't help with household chores and only criticized my actions. Unable to tolerate this, I decided to temporarily move back to my parents' home earlier than planned to give birth. When I mentioned going home, my husband casually said,
Do whatever you want.
My mother-in-law added fuel to the fire by saying, "Don't come back if it's not a boy." Yes, I had purposely not found out the baby's gender. I wanted it to be a surprise. Yet, to hear such a thing, all I hoped for was a healthy baby. Once back at my parents' home, I spent the remaining time of my pregnancy in peace. A month later, my daughter arrived, a little ahead of schedule. Weighing over 105 ounces, I named her Clara. She was so adorable, I thought. Even if she's a girl, my mother-in-law would surely love her. Once my husband saw his own child, I was sure he would stop his foolish affair. But neither he nor my mother-in-law came to visit Clara, not during my hospital stay or even after we were discharged. I tried calling, and instead of my husband, my mother-in-law yelled at me, "Can't even have a son." My parents were livid. Though they tried contacting my husband Gail multiple times, he never responded. My parents told me,
"You don't have to go back to such a terrible husband."
my husband, who wouldn't even come to see his daughter, and the struggles of new motherhood were taking a toll on me. I was approaching my physical and mental limits. I was supposed to go back after the 1-month checkup, but fear kept me at my parents' home, caring for Clara. What should I do next? Even if I go back home, Gail won't visit Clara. If I return, he probably won't help with raising her either. That's when I began seriously considering divorce. Planning to make a final decision, I decided to return home once. A few days later, I left Clara with my parents and went back to my husband's home after 2 months. But what I found there was beyond belief. Wait, why is she here? My favorite sofa was occupied by Rilana, my husband's mistress, and in her arms, a newborn baby. That's when I remembered that Rilana was also pregnant. Mother-in-law was cooing. "Boys really are adorable, aren't they?" Upon noticing me, she opened her mouth sarcastically. "Oh, Cecily, what brings you here?" Mother-in-law? Mother-in-law, drop it, would you? I have already set up a new daughter-in-law. A new daughter-in-law? Yes, Gil's girlfriend. Rilana gave birth to a boy, and she's far better than you. I was speechless, hearing mother-in-law say that so blatantly. My husband looked at me and laughed as if mocking me.
"We are already divorced. I'm living with her now, so you better leave."
Divorced? What are you talking about? I haven't signed any divorce papers.
"I did it for you. Be grateful. After all, you're the one to blame for not giving birth to a boy."
Rage boiled up in me like dancing flames. Any love I had for my husband was gone. I held back my urge to yell and told him, "Fine, I'll accept the divorce, but is that child really yours?"
What are you talking about?"
Do you guys even know your affair partner there, Rilana? Was it? She's been involved with many other men.
"What? How do you know that?"
Because I knew all about Gail's cheating. I ignored it, thinking he would change after Clara was born. Clearly, I was foolish. My husband looked shocked. He probably never thinking his affair was out in the open. He was visibly disturbed by how easily I accepted the divorce. I coldly told him, "Divorcing you is a wish come true for me, but in return, stay out of my life. Clara and I will live on our own. And let's forget you were even a father. Oh, and I expect full alimony in the divorce settlement. Got it? That includes from Rilana."
Hold on. What do you mean Rilana has other partners? Is this true?
Yes, it's true. I had a detective look into it. Why not get a DNA test if you're so doubtful? You might find some interesting results, including who the real father is.
Is this true, Rilana?
Rilana looked away uncomfortably at his questioning.
Answer me.
Well, that's what you get for a relationship that started on a dating app. Unable to bear it any longer, my husband turned to me and began to plead.
Oh, wait, hold on. If that's the case, I'm fine raising a child that's ours. I don't have any obligation to raise someone else's kid.
Shut up. Trying to act like a father now? You've got to be kidding me. Everyone in the room shuddered at my raised voice. You never lifted a finger to help me while I was struggling through pregnancy. Don't even start with your nonsense. I have completely fallen out of love with you. I can't stand the sight of you. Don't ever show your face in front of me and my child again. Amidst my own heavy breathing, I hurriedly packed up my belongings. Ignoring my husband's calls, I walked out of the house. Later, I contacted a lawyer to claim alimony in the divorce court against my ex-husband and his affair partner. I also demanded child support from him and made sure he paid it all at once. After some time, I received news from Gail about the DNA test results. As expected, the child born from Rolana wasn't his. Confronted with these results, she had this to say: "All I needed was someone with money." Turns out, she never loved Gail. As soon as the truth came out, Rolana took the child and disappeared. Mother-in-law was furious about the whole situation. She's demanding Gail to bring me back, and he has been flooding my phone with messages.
My mom wants you to come back. She's throwing fits every day, wanting a grandchild. Help me out. I promise I'll never cheat again. Please, forgive me.
His messages, full of empty promises, left me unimpressed. Naturally, I have no intention of going back. Whatever their reasons, I have decided never to see them again. Now, I am back at my parents' home, struggling through the early stages of motherhood with their support. It's tough, but every day, I find joy in my daughter's growth. There may come a day when my daughter will miss having a father, but I hope to shower her with so much love that it will erase any sadness she might feel.